Who are you? I mean that. Think about it. Who are you? I'm a big proponent in the power of questions, and if you've been following me for some time, you know that I always talk about how the quality of our questions determines the quality of our thinking, which in turn determines the quality of the experiences that we have, which add up to the quality of our life, right? So if we ask ourselves good questions, it stands to reason that we will have better experiences and therefore a better life and a better experience of life in general, right? So I'm going to ask that question again. Who are you? See, what I have found in working with people, and actually in even examining myself, is that very few of us have a good solid answer to the question, who are you? The problem with that question is that we tend to answer it using roles or labels. So for most people, if you ask them, who are you? They're going to go straight to, well, I'm an engineer, or I'm a teacher, or I'm a mom, or I'm a dad, right? So we use labels and or titles or roles to answer the question, who are you? If we are pressed a little bit more, we might use our name or our relationship with other people, but none of those things are really who we are. Those are just roles we play, or titles that have been assigned to us, or labels that we have accepted as part of our existence and our identity. This question is a lot harder to answer than it might seem at face value, but it's also one of the most critical questions that we could ever spend time trying to answer. So what I thought might be a positive and productive exercise for us to do today here on Sincerely Speaking is to talk through some of the things that actually make up our identity, that are the true answer to that question, who are you? And that might help us shift a bit in the way we perceive ourselves, what we do, and how we face our day to day. Are you ready for this deep conversation today? Then stick around. Hi, welcome to Sincerely Speaking. I'm Marcia Amaro, your self-leadership coach. Now what that means is I'm here to help you rediscover your calling, tap into your greatest potential and strengths, and eliminate those things that keep getting in your way and in the way of your success. So whatever success looks like to you, whether it is in your career, in your business, in your relationships, or in your life in general, I'm here to help you get out of your own way, remove the obstacles, and elevate all of your life to the next level. If you're ready to see everything that you're capable of and see what your life can look like, I invite you to head on over to marciamaro.com and set up a 30-minute clarity and confidence call where we will talk about your mission, your vision, your goals, the things that you're here on this planet to create, what might be getting in the way up until now, and some actionable, amazing ways to get out of your own way to eliminate all those obstacles and reach the level of success that you've been dreaming of. Are you ready? Are you ready for the next level? Then stick around to this conversation of Sincerely Speaking, and then head on over to marciamaro.com and schedule your 30-minute call. Can't wait to meet you in person. Chat soon. Because I'm all about transparency and about giving credit where credit is due, I want to say that a lot of the ideas and the concepts that we are going to be talking about today have been reinforced lately by studying the work of Dr. Benjamin Hardy. I don't know if you know who he is. He has a bunch of books out, some of them with Dan Sullivan, some of them by himself. But lately I've been reading Personality's Not Permanent and How to Be Your Future Self Now. Those are two of his best books in my opinion, so you can go check them out if you'd like. I can even just link them here on the show notes. But the point is that as I've been studying his work, as I've been reading his books and going through some of his videos on YouTube and all these things, some of the ideas that I teach and some of the things that I've helped people work through have become even clearer. In fact, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I find in my life that a lot of the inner work that I do feels kind of like spring cleaning. You know, when you are getting ready to do spring cleaning, or maybe even now before putting up the Christmas tree or the holiday decorations and all these things, one of the things that tends to happen, at least in my world, is that everything becomes ultra chaotic right before everything gets back in its place and everything becomes clean and pristine and organized and beautiful. I'm getting ready to put up my Christmas tree. I put it up in October. And so I know that before the Christmas tree is up and all the decorations are up and all the holiday cheer is on the walls, that it is going to be chaotic with boxes and little bits of Christmas tree bits all over the place and all these things, right? So I know it's going to get chaotic before it gets beautiful. And my inner work and what I have found with a lot of my clients and the people that I work with is also the same, that it becomes really chaotic right before it gets better. So as I've been doing even deeper work, because the work of personal development, the work of becoming your best self, the work of moving in the direction of progress is never really completed. It's never done. You reach one milestone and then you realize that you have another 10 milestones waiting ahead of you, right? And if you're ever just settled in one spot, that is where complacency and despondency and lack of fulfillment and the sense of lack of worth and this feeling that you don't have meaning in your life, all of those things set in. So it's not that we're ever going to be completely done, right? We are moving towards a goal. In fact, that is what success is. It's the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So we have this overall calling that I talk about all the time that we know we're probably not going to bring to its complete fulfillment, but that we're moving towards getting closer and closer to doing everything we can to make sure that we are attributing and contributing to completing this. So as I've been doing this deeper dive into my own work, I have encountered so much chaos and so much turmoil. So as I sit here today recording this for you, I have been struggling. I have been spinning my wheels a little bit, and I have been re-examining and re-envisioning how I approach all these things, because I know that chaos comes before the new level. Chaos usually comes before I see the next elevation that I get to rise up to and that I get to aim to. And as I raise my standards, I feel it's almost like I'm turning, and Ed Milet says this all the time, your ceiling becomes your floor. So as I'm elevating to that next level where my current ceiling becomes my floor and I'm working to create a new ceiling, I am demolishing that bottom floor and I am building around myself this new floor. So you know when you're in the middle of construction and everything feels dusty and nasty and you can't see the end result yet, that's the way my life is right now. But I also have the tools that we're going to be talking about today, and some of the ones that I've been incorporating as I've been studying the work of Dr. Benjamin Hardy and others. And as I do all these things, I understand that this temporary discomfort is important, and it's essential to moving me out of where I'm at and aiming to new levels, right? I often tell the story of the dog that's sitting on the nail, and the person is hearing the dog complain all the time, and the dog's just whining, and the owner, he asks the owner why the dog is complaining, and the owner says, well, he's sitting on a nail, and the person asks, well, why doesn't he move? And the owner's answer is, well, I guess it doesn't bother him enough to move, right? So we're very often in that space, like the dog sitting on the nail, complaining and complaining and whining and complaining, but we don't get bothered enough to move, to go out and stand and leave the nail behind and go find a better place to lay, right, to sit. So we're often in that space, and until it gets uncomfortable enough, until the pain of staying where we're at is greater than the pain of moving, very seldom do we take any action. And a big part of taking that action, moving ourselves beyond it without having to give in to more discomfort and more pain than is absolutely necessary, is being able to lead ourselves through the conversation that we're going to have today. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about what is that element in the question of who are you that can have the power of either keeping us stuck or moving us forward. See, one of the things that Dr. Ben Hardy says, and that I believe wholeheartedly, and that I say in different terms, right, with different verbiage a lot, is that our identity drives our behavior. Our identity drives our behavior. You've probably heard me say before that we don't do what we want, we do who we are. And it's that same notion, it's that same concept. So when we are in a space where we envision something and we want to accomplish something, but we don't see ourselves as the kind of person who does that thing or who can have that thing or who deserves that thing, then it doesn't matter how much outside work we do. It doesn't matter how many systems or programs or strategies we learn from others or we try to put in place. We're going to move a little bit forward and then sabotage ourselves and go all the way back to our original state. And my lead says it this way: we have our thermostat set to where we're comfortable at. And unless we change our identity and raise our identity to being higher on that thermostat, what's going to happen is the same thing that happens with your air conditioning or your heater in your home, right? You can have it set at 75, and if it gets down to, if it gets up to 80, the AC kicks in and it brings you back down to 75, right? If it goes down to 65, then it's the same thing. It will kick in the AC and you will go up to, or whatever, the heater, and you will go up to 75, right? So it will keep you at that level. So what you need to do is change your identity, and that is like changing the setting on the thermostat, and it is going to allow you to go to a different level in that temperature, in that scenario, right, in that analogy. So when we don't check and we don't understand how our identity, who we are, how we define ourselves, interferes with or might even block our ability to do whatever we need to do to get to the next level, that is when we encounter that self-sabotage. The issue is, though, that when we are working to move out of our current identity, then it feels chaotic for a bit. It feels chaotic because we're rattling our foundation, because we're turning that ceiling into a floor, right? So we are taking away the old floor, creating a new one with the ceiling, and creating new ceilings and new walls around it, right? One of the problems that we have with all of this is that very often when we're working with this issue of identity, we also confront an issue of authenticity and honesty, right? Whenever we're talking about being authentic, what we're talking about is being honest with ourselves and with the people around us. And I've talked before about how authenticity doesn't necessarily mean that you act and look exactly the same with every person in every situation. In fact, part of what makes you a functional human being and a functional adult is your flexibility and your ability to adapt to certain things and to shift the way you act and react depending on your context and your environment and the things that are going on around you and the things that you're working towards. So authenticity doesn't mean that we are in a plateau in the same level all the time. To the contrary, if you're going to be fully authentic, then you have to be able to understand, accept, and work with your emotions, which shift depending on different things, right? And we will talk about that at another episode. You also need to be able to be aware of yourself and yourself in space, so in space and time. So be aware of the context and what best suits you and others in that context. And also to be aware of how your scope of personality, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute, how the scope of who you are can best fit whatever it is that you're doing without you being somebody else, without you attempting to imitate someone else to the point where who you are gets lost. Let me give you an example of what I mean. As you know, I was a teacher for a very, very long time, 28 years to be exact. And in that time, I taught every single grade level from kindergarten to college. I still teach a couple of college classes, but when I was like a regular public school classroom teacher, I taught every single grade level from kindergarten to 12th grade. And I taught college as well. So what I encountered was this. When I was working with elementary school kids, I still spoke to them the same way that I spoke to my junior high and high school students. I did not know how to come down to their level. I would still address them using the same kind of vocabulary that I'm using to talk to you right now. And I still address them as if they were grown-ups, or at least close to grown-ups, and as if they had the capacity to operate at a higher functional level, right? So the prefrontal cortex executive functioning thing, I didn't understand it. I didn't know how to play around it. I didn't know how to cater to those kids, which is why my tenure at elementary school, my attempt at being an elementary school teacher was short-lived. It was only in the elementary school classroom for 3 years out of my 28. Then I got moved into the office to work with the teachers as opposed to working with the students. And then I moved out of the elementary school space and I never went back, because I could not bring myself to be flexible enough in my approach to talk to little kids as little kids. Right now, I could probably do a slightly better job because I've raised my 2 daughters through those stages. But even my daughters, I didn't really talk to as if they were kids. I remember when my oldest was in pre-K, actually, she used to go into these crying fits that would not stop. Like she would cry for 35, 40, 50 minutes nonstop. And so one day I arrived to pick her up, and her teacher is at her wit's end, not knowing what to do with my daughter because she had already been crying for over 30 minutes straight, and she didn't know what else to do to appease her, to calm her down, to get her to stop crying. So I go in and I grab my daughter by the shoulders softly. I didn't like rattle her or anything. I just turned her so that she could look at me, and I said, her name, Mareni. I said, Mareni, look at me. Look at me. And she turned up her eyes and looked straight at me. And I said, okay, take a breath. Breathe again. Let me see you breathe. And we are done with this. And she stopped crying. The teacher looked at me like I was insane. And later on we had a conversation, because we had a good relationship. We had a conversation about how she couldn't believe that I was treating that 3-year-old as if she was 15, 20, or 25, just asking her to settle down and be done with whatever it is that she was doing. And then we had a conversation. I mean, like, my daughter and I had a conversation. She told me what was bothering her. We worked through it. But my first way of calming her down was very much not the way you calm down a little kid, right? So I know that I didn't have this ability to get to that level. So being authentic doesn't always mean that you're going to be the same with everybody, because the way I was the same with those little kids was not suitable for continually working with them. Does that make sense? So you need to be able to be flexible enough to adjust your approach and to adjust your personality depending on the circumstances that are around you. Not that circumstances drive you, but you know what I mean. So authenticity is a tricky thing. But one of the problems with authenticity and with living in your identity and with being able to elevate your identity to reach these new standards is that we are very often not honest with ourselves. We're not honest with what we really want. We're not honest with what's really bothering us. We're not honest with what we really could do that we haven't done. We're not honest with a lot of things. And so we end up spinning our wheels in these areas because we don't have full honesty with ourselves. So that is the very first thing, is to bring awareness and honesty into the situation so that we can start understanding who we really are. Now, here's the other tricky thing about identity and answering the question who you are. Who we are is really a combination of three things, right? And I think of it as a triangle. And I'm honestly not sure if this derived from reading other people's works. So if you recognize this from somewhere else, please excuse that I'm not giving credit. It's just, when you study a lot of these things, you start internalizing things to the point where they kind of become yours and you don't really remember where they came from. They all kind of melt together. So think of it as a triangle, right? And in that triangle, you have on one side the programming that you've received. So from the moment you are born and they slap your booty and they say it's a girl or it's a boy, that is the first programming that you start receiving, right? And from that moment on, you start getting programming after programming after programming, first from your parents and your family, then from school systems, then from peers, then from TV shows, then from movies, then from music, then from all of these things that work in typing in programs into your heart, like Chad Helmstetter taught me once, where it's everything that you hear, everything that is directed at you. It's like somebody is typing on a keyboard that is plugged directly into your heart, especially as a little kid. And you don't have any say in what gets put in there, what gets inputted into your heart through that programming. So we have all these programs that we didn't ask for, that we're mostly unaware of, that do control how we perceive the world, that do control how we perceive ourselves, that do control a lot of the ways in which we act, until we bring awareness to them and start reframing and reprogramming those original programs, right? But that is the first level. Your identity is partly those programs that are ingrained in you, that were placed in there by the influences of the outside, right? Then there's the experiences that you live through. So we each go through different experiences, and even when we face the exact same situation at the exact same time, the programs that we have kind of help us understand or filter those experiences, right? So it's not just the experience itself, is the meaning that we attach to those experiences, is the way in which we take that experience and we process it or we remember it. One of the things that I love that Dr. Benjamin Hardy teaches is that when we think about our past, what we're really doing is using our imagination to understand or fill in the gaps about what actually happened. So when we are quote unquote remembering things, we're not really remembering facts. We're imagining or using our imagination, our creativity to put together a story about what it was that happened, essentially, right? So anything that we think we remember, we are filtering through all the programmings and all the other previous experiences and everything that we are and everything that has already been deposited into our minds and into our psychology, right, into our psyche, and we spit out something that makes sense to us, that sounds real to us, that to us feels like fact, but that in reality, if we compare it to someone else who was also there, might be very, very different. That's why eyewitness testimonies are so tricky sometimes, right? Eyewitness accounts can be so different sometimes. It's because we're using our imagination to put these things, these pieces together, and the way I do it might be completely different from the way you do it, and in fact probably will be at least slightly different, right? So we have our programs, we have our experiences, and then finally we have our interpretations of these things. So how do we, what label do we give the things? What meaning do we assign to the things that we understand? How do we perceive and therefore understand the world around us based on the programs and the experiences, right? So our identity is actually the stories that we come up with and what we most believe about ourselves based on those three things: the programming that we've received, the experiences we've been through, and the interpretations we've given to those things, right? So our identity is very, very hard to pinpoint because we have new experiences every day and we have new interpretations even of past experiences all the time, and we have new programming and old programming that might be even competing with itself, right? So to define our identity is a very tricky thing to do, but ultimately what I would love for us to understand is that we get to decide our identity in the same way that we get to decide what interpretations of or meanings we give to the experiences and the programs that we've had in our lives or that we get in our lives moving forward, right? So this is the second point. The first point is to be really, really honest with yourself about what you're experiencing, what you're feeling, what you really want, what you really want to be and where you really want to go, and to bring awareness to that, to really bring awareness to what you really want. The second thing then is to understand that your identity is a decision that you're going to make. And what I am going to suggest, which again has been solidified by studying Dr. Hardy, but I've said this in the past, is that you get to look at who you get to be. Who do you want to be in the future? What is that future self that you're working towards? And once you understand who you're working towards, let that future you help you define who you get to be today and start working towards being that future self. In fact, once you understand who that future self is and who that future you gets to be, then you can look back at the programming and the experiences of the past and give them new meaning that makes them helpful experiences that you can use to propel you forward towards that future self that you want to be. So for example, my dad, I've told you the story before, but my dad was diagnosed with a terminal disease when I was 13. That same year, my baby sister was born. There's 5 of us. And we each interpreted that situation of my dad being diagnosed with a terminal disease differently. At the time, what I took it to mean was that it was time for me to stop dreaming, stop being a little kid, assume adult responsibilities, assume charge of the house, and make sure to help my mom, my siblings, and everybody else around me. And so I suppressed a lot of my childhood, or my innocence, I guess you could call it, moving from that moment forward, because I was suddenly faced with the fact that my dad was mortal and was eventually going to die, right? And up until that time, I had never even thought about my dad dying. So when I looked at that experience and what it did for me moving forward, and when I focused on this is what happened, this is the fact, and I looked at all that, for a long time I felt angry and I felt cheated, Because I was 13. Why did I have to assume responsibility of my brothers that were older than me, of my 7-year-old sister and my baby sister that had just been born, so that my mom could go take care of my dad in the hospital, and all these things that were happening around us, and everything felt unstable and everything felt scary, and I was angry for a very long time. And I felt cheated of years that should have been fun, and I was trying to be an adult taking care of things. Now, the reality is nobody told me that I needed to do that. It was me interpreting the situation, right? It was me bringing my own interpretation into the program and the experience. But when I understood that I could decide what that meant, filtering it through who I want to be, then the meaning completely changed. Because what that experience did is it allowed me to tap into a power that I didn't know I had inside myself. It allowed me to see how much I was capable of doing. It allowed me to understand that I can do hard things and that I can figure things out, and to see that even in the most dire of circumstances, there are resources at our disposal that we just need to tap into and go looking for, right? So when I look at who I want to be in the future, who I get to be moving forward, the movement that I want to create, the speaking that I want to do, the contact that I want to have, the impact that I want to create in the world, then I see that that experience when I was 13 was the catalyst for me understanding that I could experience impact beyond myself, that I could do more than I thought I could, that I could do hard things, that I was stronger, that I am stronger than I often give myself credit for, and that there is nothing that my God and I can't handle together, right? So I gave that whole experience a new meaning. And you can do that with any experience that you have in the past, especially those that up until now have felt like you were handed a shorthand, right? Like you were handed a bad hand. Shortchanged is the word that I was looking for, that you were shortchanged. You can go back and look at those experiences, filter them through who do you get to be, and then think, okay, if this is who I'm going to be, how did this experience help me gain capability, strength, knowledge, understanding, abilities, anything that can help me become the person that I know I get to be faster and better, right? So it's that opportunity to redefine and give new meaning to the past based on the future. So just understand that it is a decision. You decide who do you want to be, and then based on that you decide what meaning you attach to everything that has happened, everything that is happening. You decide what you say yes and no to moving forward, so that it moves you closer to that person that you get to be. But it first starts with being really aware, right? Doing that piece of really understanding and being honest with what you want, where you want to go, what you want to do. Using that to help you define your future self, and then using that future self to help you make decisions as to the meaning that you give the things from the past and the present, and how you say yes or no to things in the future, right? Moving forward. And then finally, finally, the one thing that we tend to ignore when we talk about who we are is that there is something called values. And our values define a lot of our identity. Our values define a lot of what we are and are not willing to do. In fact, they are what define what we are and are not willing to do. And our values are the ones that help us feel like we are being good human beings or not being good human beings. If you're doing anything that goes against your values, you're often going to feel like you're not being a good human being, like you're doing something wrong. But if you are operating in accordance to your values and in alignment with your values, then you can move forward faster because you're feeling like you're doing good, like you're being a good human being, like you're doing the right thing. And so the exercise here is to reconnect with your values. If you're not sure how to do that, send me an email at marcy@marcyamara.com and I'll get you some resources your way. And there's actually a couple of episodes, if you scroll here, that might help you with that. But just send me an email at marcy@marcyamara.com and I will send you the resources. But it's important for you to understand what your core values is. What are those things that are non-negotiable for you, that are most important for you? And then do the exercise of reconciling your future self, who you get to be, with those values, so that they propel you forward faster, so that you are clear on who you are now, where the gap is, and how you can move toward that future self without feeling like you're butting heads with yourself, right? So just to recap a little bit, and I know that I covered a lot of information in a very short time, and I will probably do another episode just focusing on some of these elements, like another one on values and another one on defining your future self now. But if you are at a spot where you are struggling to move forward, where you are feeling like you are not getting to the space where you want to get to, then what I invite you to do is take a close look at that question, who are you? And how is that clashing with the person that you want to become or the things that you're trying to do? And it all starts with full honesty and awareness. Then it goes into understanding that you get to decide who your future self gets to be and what meaning you attach and interpretations you attach to the past and to the present based on that. And then you get to see where your values are, and you get to make sure that everything that you're doing is in alignment with those values so that you don't clash against yourself and continue to sabotage your progress forward. Now, if all of this sounds wonderful, but you're feeling a little bit confused about where to start, if you don't know what your next step gets to be, I have a special invitation for you this week and next week. If you're listening past the first full week in November, just send me an email and I'll let you know where we're at. But I am putting together a beta experience for my Ascent program, which is how to discover your path to certainty and impact. And that Ascent program is going to be an extended 8-week group coaching experience in which we are going to dive into a lot of the things that we worked on today, but we're going to go deeper. We're going to give you actionable things to do. We're going to eliminate all the fluff and get you moving forward faster. So if you're interested in just more information, and if you would like to be part of this exclusive, it's going to be small, this exclusive group of people that participate in my beta experience, go to www.projectascend.me. Again, it's www. You do need to type in the www, okay? So www.projectascend.me. You'll get all the details there. It's going to be highly hyper discounted for this beta group. Moving forward, it's going to be a lot higher in investment, but I want to invite you to be part of this program, to be part of this group, and to experience what elevating your life to the next level looks like and what it feels like, and the impact that you can make in the world once you get out of your own way and you tap into your calling and your values. So again, www.projectascend.me to get all the details and to sign in. Again, it's going to be a very limited group, so if you go in there and you see join the waiting list, then that means our beta group is full. But for now it isn't, so go to www.projectascend.me, get all the details, and sign up to be part of this beta experience. I can't wait to have you in there to support you and to see you reach your highest next level, to help you make that floor into your ceiling into a floor, and to help you elevate your life to new unparalleled levels of success. Until I see you in there, and until next time, this has been Marcia Martin. This has been Sincerely Speaking. Share this with the people that you love, like, subscribe, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.